growing up, my main memories of the arcade were from when we'd visit the southeast coast down from London, and this was in the 90s, so I was playing things like Time Crisis, House of the Dead, and a whole lot of Sega Rally. Man, my dad loved that shit. I bet that was the whole reason we moved down to the coast. But this arcade experience was completely different from the one my brother and my parents were getting in the 80s. They were playing all the classic stuff like Pac-Man, Space Invaders, Galaxian Defender, and my mum's favourite, Outrun. This was stuff that I wouldn't play until a lot later in life when I played on MAME around my brother's house. But before that, my first experience with older arcade games was with Midway Arcade Treasures. Midway was a company I knew for Mortal Kombat and NHL hits and nothing else really. My mum actually got this game so she could play some Defender, and so obviously I gave a lot of the games a go. And I found a lot of stuff to enjoy in this first Midway Arcade Treasures collection, and there's actually 3 of these that were released, so one day I'll actually go through all the others. But today I thought I would just check out the first one and all the games on it. First off we have 720. Now I'm going to be brutally honest here, I don't like this game. It's not a fun game, and I know there's people that really like this game, but I just can't get into it. Maybe it's because I never played it growing up, and this game certainly hasn't aged well. The controls just seem stiff and it's not that easy to get used to. And you'd think it'd be easy as there's only one button to make your skateboarder move and one button for doing ollies, but it's not, because it just feels janky and awful. It's hinted at that there's some way to do tricks, but I never figured out how to do it. So basically, you can only ollie and move, and that really brings down the fun of this game. When I started the game, I was plonked down in a skate park not knowing what the fuck I had to do. So I skateboarded around for a bit until after roughly 30 seconds when I was murdered by a swarm of killer bees. So you're supposed to go and take part in all these different little minigame challenges that are spread around this little skate park hub world, and you use the money you earn from these challenges to buy new gear for your skateboarder. All of the equipment just literally makes your skateboarder control a little bit better. Great. Couldn't they have just, you know, made him control better from the fucking start? The 2 challenges I took part in while playing this game were downhill, where you're just trying to get to the bottom of a course as quick as you possibly can, and ramp, where you're just trying to get as high a score as you possibly can. I really hated ramp, as the awful controls in this game really make this bit awful to play. You'll be falling out of the ramp and going all over the place, and it really gets old fast as you're just going back and forth, jumping and spinning. Wow, so much fun. I think the thing that really stops me having any fun with this game is that bloody short 30-second timer on the main hub area of this game, as it barely gives you any time to do anything. I mean, couldn't they think of a better way to do it? Like maybe, I don't know, make it so that there's no timer, but when you get hit by cars or enemies, you just die. I get that this is an arcade game and you need a mechanic to get the player off the machine in a reasonable time, but I just feel like the obtuse nature of this game makes it so that the player would play for 30 seconds not knowing what to do, get murdered by bees, and then give up because it's not fun. I honestly think this game could have been a whole lot better if it was simplified and more streamlined, but on a more positive note, I really do dig the graphics. They kind of look like the graphics from Marble Madness. It's just a shame the gameplay is so awful. Blaster. This might be the weirdest game on this entire collection. It confused me as soon as I started the damn thing. You start the game and you're confronted by this screen. Vampires, Saucerland, Time Tunnel, Cat World, Armageddon, Paradise. What the fuck am I looking at? And then you're dumped onto this screen. Okay, what are all these fucking options? What the fuck is going on? All this shit does make sense when you actually get into the gameplay, but as a person playing this for the first time, it's very confusing. And the fact that you're only given 10 seconds to figure this shit out is the problem. But basically this first screen just shows you the 20 levels in the game, and the second screen is technically a difficulty setting, but from what I've played it only seems to start you on a later level, with everything being the same difficulty. After that bollocks, we get into some gameplay. Holy shit, playing this game is an overwhelming experience. And once your eyes have adjusted to this eye-melting pixel junk that's on the screen, the gameplay is actually very simple and kind of fun. The game works in 4 different phases. This seizure-inducing first phase where you're flying around avoiding walls and enemies and trying to go through all these glowing archways. Then you come to phase 2, which is a lot kinder on the eyes, and in this section you're trying to avoid asteroids while shooting at enemies and trying to catch these flying spacemen that come towards you. In the third phase you're just shooting at hordes of enemies in the same kind of setting as the last phase, and then you finish with the 4th phase where you're again shooting at enemies, but this time you have to shoot the red enemy first or last, and that's the gameplay loop of this game. I don't know what it is about the first section of this game, but it just feels like hot garbage to play it. It feels like the whole section is running at like 10 frames per second and everything just looks ugly as hell. I mean, don't get me wrong, I do kind of dig the Atari 2600 kind of look of this whole section, but it's just so hard to tell what's going on half the time and you'll constantly get hit by shit that you don't see coming. The controls on this bit feel laggy, and I hate the fact that the controls are inverted, so up is down and down is up. I feel like this whole game would have been a whole lot better if the movement was just normal, and I kind of feel like this whole game didn't need to be in first person. At times it's really hard to know when you're going to get hit by something. Having a little ship sprite would have made things a lot better. But the rest of the sections of the game are all basically the same, except for the graphics on these space-based bits look a lot better and cleaner. This is a crushingly difficult game, and a lot of the problems I mentioned make it not exactly the funnest game. But at the very least it's interesting, so that's something, I guess. Bubbles is a game where you play a bubble. Bet you would have never guessed that from the title. And this bubble is for some reason going around a sink collecting I honestly can't figure out what they're meant to be. Maybe smaller bubbles or little baby bells? Yeah, that's totally it. And you also collect these underwater ants and... Ah, my greatest fear, tiny witches! And your bubble has also got to make sure he doesn't get killed by bigger underwater ants and weird little brooms with eyes. I'm glad to find out I'm not the only one who has sentient kitchen appliances. Where's that salad that I always definitely eat? Whoa! Why are you always so mean? And as you collect all this random bollocks, your bubble will slowly develop a horrifying face. And once all the mini baby bells have been collected from the screen, you move on to the next level. Sure, it's a simple enough premise, and it would have actually been quite fun if the control of your horrifying bubble didn't ruin any fun you could have with this game. There's no precision or nuance to the controls, it just feels like you're constantly fighting with the controls, and that's not something you want to be doing in a game like this. Add into the fact that the theme is so bizarre and uninspired that it could have easily come off the Action 52 cartridge, and you've got a very unmemorable game. Defender. Ah, now this is a bloody classic arcade game. This is more like it. No sentient bubbles or glowing seizure-inducing shit right here. Well, apart from the logo at the start. Defender is a side-scrolling shooter where you're trying to kill all the aliens on the screen whilst also making sure that the enemies don't abduct the humans. I'm not gonna lie, I accidentally kill the humans when I try to save them. A lot. I can see why my mum got so obsessed with this game in her local pub back in the day. It's fun as fuck. Sure, getting used to the way the ship handles can take a few minutes, as when you turn around it's not exactly the smoothest thing ever, but once you've got the handling down, ducking and weaving and killing aliens is fucking awesome. But it wouldn't be an 80s arcade game if it wasn't hard as sin. You could almost say it's the Dark Souls of arcade games. Defender 2. It's Defender again, but with a 2 at the end this time. Gauntlet is a game that is highly revered as a classic, and I get that maybe in an arcade setting with a few friends this probably could have been a lot of fun in the 80s, but time hasn't exactly been that kind to this game. But I obviously didn't play this back in the day, so I don't have the nostalgia boner for this game like many older gamers do. I do love the D&D theme and the graphics that are quite honestly beautiful for the time it was released, and the fact that it supports 4-player is awesome. But the gameplay just isn't fun. You have the same projectile attack with a different sprite no matter which character you're playing. Sure, the characters do handle slightly differently, but it's not that noticeable. You also have a button that unleashes a screen clearing move and, well, that's about it. You're given impossible numbers of enemies to fight that drain your health like it was a battery on an iPhone. And I get that this was done so that you have to fork up more cash to keep playing, but it's still annoying. The enemies have these spawn points that they come out of, and they respawn out of it so fucking quickly. No matter what you do, you'll be taking a bunch of hits before you can destroy the monster nest. And the way they've placed the enemies just takes the fucking piss. I mean, look at this level. You spawn with a bunch of projectile throwing enemies all around you that you can't hit back. The level design is quite frankly fucking awful. Nothing makes sense on any of these levels. I could stand about 5 minutes of it before I had to tap out because of pure boredom and annoyance. Joust, another stone cold classic arcade game, but this one I think holds up a whole lot better than the other games I've talked about in this video. In Joust, you're playing a man that's riding what I can only assume is an emu, and you're of course jousting against other birds on your emu. Whoever made this game was obviously on some serious fucking drugs. You've basically got to bump into enemies to kill them, but you have to be higher than the enemy or you die. Once you've cleared the screen of the enemies, the next wave will appear. The control of your emu definitely takes some getting used to, as it's momentum based and it just feels like you were playing Super Mario Brothers, but you're never allowed to let go of the run button. The movement definitely doesn't feel smooth. Most of the time when you die it'll be because your emu wasn't moving exactly how you wanted it to, which can get frustrating, but even with that said, it's still a fun and addicting little arcade game. Every time I died I just wanted to have another go, so that's a testament to how fun this game is, even if the controls are a bit wank. Joust 2. It's Joust with a 2 at the end, and it's slightly worse. Clax is this arcade collection's token puzzle game. Every collection of games always has to have a puzzle game, and here it is. I love this game's slogan. It is the 90s, and there is time for clacks. That's true, there is time for clacks, but you know what there's also time for? A much better puzzle game released a few years before this. So in clacks, you're of course matching up things like you do in every puzzle game ever, and in this puzzle game you're matching different coloured tiles, and unsurprisingly you have to match 3 or more in a row to make them disappear from the board. Each wave, as this game calls it, has its own amount of matches that you need to do before you can move on. Sometimes you'll have to match them horizontally and sometimes vertically. And this game does not fuck about. By the 3rd wave I was already starting to have trouble. If you fuck up even once, you're basically fucked, so make sure you're concentrating. I know people always shit on this game, but I honestly don't think it's that bad. I mean, I don't love it, but it's perfectly playable, and I'm quite a big fan of puzzle games anyway, so maybe I'm more likely to like it. But whatever, Clacks is pretty good, certainly better than some of the trash I've had to play so far. Marble Madness is a game I first played on the Mega Drive, and it's a game I'm very fond of. Sure, it's the dark styles of marble racing simulators, but it's still fun failing in this game. Unlike a lot of the games in this collection, the controls actually do hold up quite nicely. Everything feels responsive once you know what you're doing, but as you can see from the gameplay footage, I absolutely suck at this game. God, those black marbles are fucking dicks. So basically in Marble Madness, you're a marble and you've got to get to the end of the course you're on as quickly as you can. And as you try to do this, enemies will try to kill you, but to be honest with you, you'll probably end up killing yourself more than the enemies. Because goddamn does it take a steady hand and some nerves of steel to negotiate these small platforms without falling off every 10 seconds. And I'm obviously bloody terrible at this game, but I still love it, which speaks volumes about how good it is, even though I can't get past the 3rd fucking level. Paperboy is such a fucking fun game that it's almost worth the price of admission alone. Unsurprisingly, in Paperboy, you play a paperboy in the roughest neighbourhood in the fucking world. I mean, you've got dogs, cats, cars, toddlers on tricycles, remote control cars, break dancers, skinheads having a turf war, and swarms of bees trying to kill your paperboy. What the fuck did this kid do to anyone?
Boy, what a headache.
I'm not surprised he quit, to be perfectly honest with you. And when you start Paperboy up, you're treated to some fucking awesome music. I don't need no more fucking cowbell! Basically, you've got to deliver to all the houses on your paper round, and you can tell which houses are on your route because they all look happy and vibrant. But the houses you're not meant to deliver to look like Addams Family houses. Who the hell owns these houses? Danzig?
And in the summertime, you got this.
I got a question. How long does blood last?
I don't know. You know, let me talk to my blood guy here.
The elfin blood will flow forever for eternity from the elfin graves. Forever.
This is f***ing great. I'm gonna line this thing with gargoyles for the sacrifices.
What's your name again?
Dan's a
I love the fact that you get bonus points for smashing up the houses that aren't subscribed. Maybe that's why everyone wants to kill this kid. It all makes sense now.
Nah. I'm smashing up your shitty house. What you gonna do about it? Nothing. Life is meaningless. Possessions don't mean shit to me. We're all gonna fucking die anyway. Susan left me and took the kids. And now I'm just left alone in this dark, black house that I rent from Danzig. And I have to pay him in my blood.
If you fail to deliver a paper to a house or smash their stuff up, they will unsubscribe and become a black house once you've finished the round for the day. And at the end of every round, you have to do a little obstacle course for bonus points, and that's basically the whole flow of the game. And it all controls and plays very well, which is honestly quite a rare thing for a game of this time. Paperboy is a fun game that's definitely worth a play now. Rampage. This is the game for the 2018 movie starring Ric Flair and Ultimo Dragon.
That's not right, you fucking idiot. That movie is based on this game.
Ah, okay. That makes more sense. Gotcha. Rampage is a classic arcade game where you basically take the role of a reject Godzilla monster and destroy a city. This game is basically the ancient version of Dynasty Warriors, as pretty much every screen in the game is exactly the same and it gets old fast. You have a random amount of buildings to take down and you've got to do it before you get murdered. Simple. And in this Midway Arcade Treasures version of this game, you've got unlimited continues, so you can basically play as long as your patience lasts, which isn't very long for me. It just feels like you're constantly being hit by shit you basically cannot deal with without taking a few hits first. so it's basically like you're playing on a timer. I get why the game is designed like this, as the game was designed to suck up money, and if the player is surviving for ages, they ain't gonna get the fat stacks. But when you're playing this now in a non-arcade setting, it's just fucking annoying because you're just constantly getting shot at by little army dudes, whirlybirds, and annoying as fuck tanks. Sure, smashing up stuff and generally being a massive cunt is fun for a short time, but you'll want to move on to something else pretty quickly. Rampart is a bit of a quirky game for when it was released, and I honestly had a lot of fun playing this game. I ended up playing for a good hour and a half when I didn't need to. Rampart consists of 3 main phases. The building phase, where you're given pieces of wall to build up your castle, kind of like Tetris, and you've got to make sure you have at least a full wall around one castle on the map. This part of the game is a lot of fun with you trying to repair your walls before the time runs out, but there's a major problem with this version of the game, and that problem is that because this is the arcade version, they've had to emulate a trackball controller, and they've not done this very well at all. Trying to do anything with any kind of accuracy just doesn't work. It just feels like you have to press the button 3 or 4 times before it would do anything, and you'll have to hit the button so much that when it finally does work, you'll have overshot what you were aiming for. This same problem plagues the cannon placing phase of this game, as sometimes you'll misplace something as you're rushing to get it done within the time limit. But for whatever reason, the last phase of this game, the actual shooting, doesn't seem to be affected as badly as the other parts of the game. You can play this game with up to 3 people, but I can't show you this as I have no friends and nobody likes me. But there's a single player mode where instead of fighting the other players, you're fighting waves of ships. I don't need no fucking friends, see? If it weren't for the dodgy controls in this version, I could have easily played this game for a couple of hours, and I'm sure it would be a really fun multiplayer game. If I had any friends to play it with.
Good old wasteland. Yep, sure is some kick-ass training. Damn it, I'm lonely. Might as well check MySpace. No new comments. No friend requests. Damn it. Well, at least I have you, Tom. You're always there for me.
I identify with Piccolo so much, but I've heard there was many console ports of this game, so I really need to track one of those down because I really want to play this game without janky controls. Road Blasters, a game where you're unsurprisingly blasting things on a road. Who would have thought that's what you'd be doing? I thought this game was going to be a game about Maureen of Blackpool Reader's Wife of 1988. In Road Blasters, you're playing a red car that suspiciously looks like the Outrun car with a roof up, and you've got to get this car to the end of the course without hitting any of the other cars or obstacles that come your way. And to be honest with you, it controls and looks pretty damn great, but I still don't find it that fun, to be honest with you. Maybe if I was actually playing the arcade version with a steering wheel, I'd be having more fun with it, but yeah, that's literally all there is to this game. Robotron 2084 is one of those games where you can just get lost in a hypnotic state for ages. You just feel like you're not even playing the game, you feel like the game is playing you. In Robotron, you play some dude who's killing aliens and robots with lasers in a twin-stick shooter fashion. Look, I know you're meant to play these games with 2 sticks, I mean, that's why they're called twin-stick shooters, but I have a confession to make. I play these types of games using the buttons. Yeah, I know, I'm a war criminal. You have other human beings on the map that you can save from getting killed by these green robot dudes for extra points, and all you need is points in this game, because, you know, it's an old arcade game, that's what it's about. I do love this game, but fuck is it hard. Not only have you got these green unkillable robot dudes roaming around, but you also have enemies that look very similar to certain human survivors, which did actually get me killed once or twice. But even with that, I was constantly going, just one more go.
Wait, what's this called? Oh no, Satan! I knew he'd come to get me one day! Oh my god! Oh! Oh! No! No! God damn it! What are you doing, Satan? What the fuck am I doing? It didn't even hit me. Holy shit, this is the ugliest thing I've ever seen. It just looks like someone went into Microsoft Paint and just clicked randomly everywhere. Maybe Satan did make this game.
But yeah, this game may look like the inside of Satan's arsehole, but it plays alright. I mean, it's a clone of Galaxian and Space Invaders that looks like absolute shit, and that's about it. SINISTAR is a free roaming space shooter with you roaming around space doing whatever you want. And whoever created this game was definitely a big Star Wars fan. I mean, these enemies kind of look like TIE fighters, and the name of the main villain in this game is SINISTAR. That is lawsuitably close to the name of the Death Star. And this game kind of just feels like a bog standard space shooter until this happens.
What the fuck was that?
Smash TV. Fucking hell is Smash TV a fun and fucking violent twin stick shooter. I mean, it's definitely the most metal game on this whole pack. And this game is a spiritual successor to another game in this pack, Robotron 2084. Apart from the graphical upgrade, the game plays pretty much exactly the same as Robotron, but the blood and guts is definitely a great added feature. But as with Robotron 2084, I kinda wish you could just shoot in any direction instead of just 8 directions, but it is what it is. You can really tell this game took some inspiration from the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie Running Man, and it's a really cool theme. You're in a dystopian future where people risk their lives to win money and prizes. I can't help but think of Slaughterama by Guar when I play this game.
The suspense is killing me. What's gonna happen next? Oh yeah. Why do skinheads wear red suspenders anyways? To hold his pants up, my version.
But fuck is this game bloody difficult. I could only manage to survive for about a minute or so before I got slaughtered by one of the hundreds of hordes of enemies. Maybe that's because this is the arcade version of the game and they want your money. Maybe the console versions were a bit kinder, but in this version of the game you get unlimited continues, which kinda ruins any challenge, but still, dying every 10 seconds isn't that fun. Maybe I just need to get good. Getting absolutely destroyed is bad enough, but you also have this chuckle nuts chiming in every now and again. Yeah buddy, you get a good long look at them titties. Long old look. I really love how as you defeat the bosses, parts of their bodies get taken off. I mean, when you fight the first boss, you first amputate his arms, then the skin from his chest, then you explode his head, then you explode most of his body and his head reappears for some reason, and then he finally explodes in a spurt of blood. As metal and awesome as this game is, I can really only stand to play this arcade version for about 20 minutes or so, because it's crushingly difficult to the point of becoming a bit boring. But this is definitely a fucking cool game. Splat. With a name like Splat, I really didn't know what to expect from this game, to be perfectly honest with you, and what I got from this game wasn't exactly what I was expecting. You get the choice of playing as one of 3 characters and then it's off to the game. From what I can gather, you're having a food fight with loads of different enemies under some sort of magic food machine that shoots out shit for you to throw at your enemies, and I honestly wasn't quite prepared for what would happen when I finally hit the enemy.
Did he just throw a tomato at that guy's head so hard that it amputated him? That's fucking amazing!
And after you amputate your enemy, you have to throw another food item at their lifeless body to finish them off. But if they get their bouncing head back, they'll be back to normal, and the same thing can happen to you as well. The way you throw your food items actually again works in a very similar way to the other twin stick shooters in this collection. This is a fun little game that I feel would be improved somewhat by some versus multiplayer action. This could be a right laugh 2-player. SPYHUNTER is a classic overhead driving game where you're basically taking part in a video game version of the driving scenes from a James Bond movie. And after I did some research, I found out that's exactly what this game was intended to be, but it never got the James Bond license, so they just slapped the name SPYHUNTER on it and put it out. In this game, you're trying to kill the enemy cars without hurting all the civilian vehicles on the road. You start off with just the machine gun, but as you go along you can get a few different weapons. To pick these weapons up, you have to drive into the back of this dodgy looking van.
Don't eat the candy!
You also have to change gears. You get low and high gears here. And to be honest with you, whenever I used the high gear, I would just crash after a few seconds. I really suck at this game, and I can't stand to play it for more than a couple of minutes. So let's move on. Super Sprint is another top-down racing game. And in this top-down racing game, you can see the whole track you've got to race in on one screen. And I kinda love the look of these tracks, especially on the tracks that loop under themselves. It's such a cool looking effect. And I really do feel like this game takes some inspiration from Scalextric sets, as they have a very similar look. This game's controls do take a little bit of getting used to, as in my first race playing this I was bouncing around like a fucking pinball. The controls in this game really feel like the controls in Micro Machines to me. You have to be very precise in what you're doing. And if you're not very precise in what you're doing, there's gonna be dire consequences in this game, because it's very hard to catch up once you fell behind. But that's really only a major problem when you're playing against the computer, as the computer never seems to fuck up. But at the end of the day, this game was really intended to be played against friends rather than the AI, because if you play with actual people, they're very likely to absolutely suck at this game like you do. This is a simple, fun racing game that, much like Micro Machines, is best enjoyed with friends. Root beer tapper. Wait, what the fuck even is root beer?
I've honestly never tried root beer before. Here we go. I bought some. Let's try this. Yeah, that was weird. Let's taste it. What does it smell like? It smells like paracetamol. That's what it smells like. Okay, let's taste this. Ugh. Ugh. It's that fucking licorice. This right here, this is the only beer I need.
Talking of an actual beer, this game was obviously originally a barman serving Budweiser to everyone, not root beer, but they changed it so they could get it into actual arcades and not just pubs. But before I knew that, I did think it was a bit weird that a bunch of adults were gathering in a place to get root beer, but knowing that it was originally beer makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you don't serve these fuckers quick enough, they will maul you. In Tapper, you're playing this Mario looking motherfucker who's serving root beer to customers on 4 different bars, and you've got to knock back the customers with the beer so they go back through the door they came from. How far they get up the bar will determine how many drinks you've got to serve them to get rid of them. If you can't get rid of a customer in 1 beer, they will drink their beer, then resume going up the bar, and also leave you with the hassle of an empty glass to deal with. If you don't collect an empty glass before it reaches the end of the bar, you'll lose. And if a customer reaches the end of the bar, they'll lay the smack down on your candy ass. And you'll also lose if you accidentally throw too many beers out and there's no customer to get the beer. When you've got customers approaching from all bars and tons of empty glasses to deal with, it can get fucking stressful. And I used to work in a real bar, and this game definitely accurately simulates a busy night at a pub. But sometimes, like in real bar work, you'll find a nice rhythm in the chaos, and it really feels satisfying when you get in that hypnotic rhythm. I really did get obsessed with this game. I just kept going to myself, I should really move on to the next game. Nah, just one more go. I love the animations of our little root beer tapper guy between levels. He'll always have a little celebratory animation.
I love how happy his face is as he violently smashes that glass. Wait, actually, how is he smashing that glass? Steins are like, yeah, really heavy. I've got one here. He'd like break his fucking ankle. See, smashing glasses isn't so fun when it accidentally smashes you in the head, is it?
There's a few different locations in this game, which I'm showing you through someone else's footage, as I'm so shit at this game that I can't even get past the 3rd level. You have this saloon, a sports event, a punk rock bar, and finally, motherfucking aliens in space.
You know what? I've changed my mind. This root beer is a hell of a thing. Hello, aliens. How's it going? Bruce, what's going on,
And the only other part of this game is this little mini game where some little hamburglar looking guy shakes up all these beer cans, and you've got to figure out which one isn't going to blow up in your face. What a dick. Who would do that to another person's beer? The horror! Root Beer Tapper is an addictive game that I would honestly play a lot more of if I had it for Game Boy or something. Shame it never got released on anything like that. It would have been a good home for it. Someone, make a homebrew of that please. Tubing is a game where you're unsurprisingly going through the water in an inflatable ring with a character that looks like Duke Nukem. And as you go down the river, you either have an AI controlled opponent or a player controlled one, with you competing for points that you get by going through these flagpole things like it was a slalom race or something. I definitely get the vibe that these guys were drunk at a beach party and thought it would be a good idea to travel hundreds of thousands of miles in a rubber fucking ring. I mean, at one point they're in a fucking Amazon, and then the next thing they're at the North Pole with the penguins assaulting them. And the main problem with this game is that it controls like absolute fucking arse. Sure, a real rubber ring controls like arse, but being 100% realistic isn't exactly fun now, is it? You have 2 buttons for each hand, one button that goes forward with one hand and one that goes backwards. But it just feels so clunky to control. Sure, you can vaguely do alright at it once you get the hang of it, but it never feels completely fun. But this game does have one thing going for it.
Is that a crocodile? Fuck this, I'm out. What was that noise? Back behind the sofa I go.
I feel like this game could be a lot more fun with a friend to tag along for the ride. Sadly, I don't have no friends. Apart from you, Tom. Vindicators It's a tank game where you go along and shoot stuff and do a bit of light RPG stat leveling between the levels, and anticlimactically, that's literally all I have to say about it. It's a tank game. It's alright, I guess. And that's the last game on the first Midway Arcade Treasures collection, and it's a bit of a hit and miss collection. The real standouts for me are Paperboy, Smash TV, Marble Madness, Root Beer Tapper, Rampage, Robotron 2084, and Rampart. And for the variety you get with this collection, I would say it's definitely worth a buy, especially considering how reasonably priced the game is. I had a lot of fun playing through a lot of these games again, even if a few of the games in the collection are fucking stinkers, and there was actually 2 more Midway Arcade Treasure games, which I will get round to in the not so distant future. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I will see you later.